So my name's Lennie. I'm based at Loughborough University, and I have two roles as well as my EDI Fellowship role there, so I get bored easily. One is working as a skills manager for something called the Energy Research Accelerator, and that works with 8 Midlands intensive universities. And my other job is the skills manager for something called, to do a deep breath now, Centre for Postdoctoral Development in Infrastructure, Cities and Energy. And that brings together the era set of people that are interested in energy with the infrastructure and cities people from UK, and then we look at all these net zero things. I predominantly work with PhD students and postdocs developing their skills, but I also do a bit of like helping with writing skills bids and supporting people within the network that are putting in bids that relate to skills. So, for example, things like the EPSRC, CDT, cool. Katie will probably introduce. Do you want to introduce yourself now, or will you just like to quickly?
Hello, everyone. I'm Katie. So I work in University of Nottingham, based at the Faculty of Engineering, where I'm Senior Technical Manager in Technical Engineering.
Okay, so our first slide is all about what an EDI Plus Fellow is. Now, I don't really have to do this because Simone's just told us all about it, so we'll quickly skip over here. But what you might be interested in is why did I actually apply? And the reason I applied is I'm actually quite active in the EDI space. It's kind of always been viewed as kind of a side thing that I do, and this actually gave me that chance to have that headspace and that time to think about doing something that was actually meant something and made a real difference. But I also noticed that, because I'm quite active in the EDI community and I'm active in quite a lot of different communities, that they don't always talk to each other and there can be some tensions. So I'm on the autistic spectrum, and a lot of interventions that get put in place for certain people, I find that then that actually makes my life a little bit more difficult. So an example is sometimes when people are trying to make recruitment more open, they'll get rid of any criteria because they're like, oh, we don't want to have like really essential criteria because it might put people off, they might opt out. But as someone that's autistic, if there isn't criteria there, I'm like, oh, well, I don't know what to do. And, you know, those kind of things. So how do we deal with those tensions? I was really interested in. And I also, you know, so it's like those unintended consequences, different interventions. And, you know, there's so much fantastic work happening. All of us in the room are probably doing something, but it tends to happen in silos. So how can we kind of, I was really interested in how we can actually work together to, you know, make things happen more efficiently and more streamlined. So what have we done so far? We've done lots of training, and this has actually been really, really good. So we started in October, and we've only now got to the point where we're actually framing our research question. And this was one of the kind of motivations that I had for joining the scheme, is that I didn't have to know exactly what my research question was. And I'm going to flash up the research questions in a minute. And as you've been told, today's been one of our second in-person days, and we were here yesterday. And I've probably slightly tweaked and changed what my research question is going to be, but based on the stuff we've done. And the training has been not just useful in my EDI, but also in the things that I do in my career. So I've recently taken on line management responsibility, and the training that I've had has been really useful for that, as well as kind of doing the things for the EDI training. So as Mo mentioned, we also have our professional learning networks, we have coaching sessions, action learning sets, and then, as I said, we've been doing our projects. So we've got kind of, when we're doing our projects, I'm the kind of person that I think best when I have someone to bounce ideas off. So the reason that Katie and I are both up here presenting is I kind of reached out to Katie and I was like, I need a person. I just need a person that I can like bounce ideas off and talk to. So we kind of basically got together and we decided that actually we worked well together. We both come from era-based universities, and I wanted to do something across the network, or the era network. And it would make sense if we kind of worked as a team. So we've got 2 projects, one which I lead, and Katie will be the co-lead, and then we swap around the other way. So, as Simone said, these projects are all based on designing, implementing and reviewing some kind of intervention within our organisation. So the organisation I'm looking at will probably be the ERA network. Realistically, it might be a few subsets within that network, but hopefully we'll get there. So the brief title that I've come up with is how might we identify, evaluate, share and adapt EDI best practice across the energy sector. So it's basically all of this fantastic stuff that's happening. How can we kind of almost get this framework where we can just hand out to people and say, okay, so you think you're a kind of level 0 and no EDI stuff. Well, here's some really good tools you can use. Here's some quick wins, and then here's how you might want to progress up to get to level 1. Or actually, you're at level 4, you're doing fantastic EDI stuff, but your work's not quite done yet. Have you thought about these resources? So it's kind of trying to pull everything together. That's my grand plan. How it's going to work, I'm not sure. We'll find out in the next year or so. And then Katy has got a whole slide about her, so I'm just going to tell you what it is, and then she'll talk about it later, which is what barriers are there for energy researchers in the academic pipeline? So there are overarching questions. So as I've said, I'm very much what I want to do is kind of breaking down silos within the EDI, and between that, I mean, between different communities. So, you know, there's a lot of work that goes on in the LGBT networks that I'm happening in, and they're very similar to what happens in the women networks or in the disability networks, but they're not always talking to each other. So it's kind of like breaking down silos between communities, but also silos between sectors. So I work across 8 different universities. Within those universities, different things happen at different schools. How can the schools talk to each other? How can the universities talk to each other? And then how can the universities talk to industry? So, you know, within ERA, one of our kind of driving forces is to get the energy research that's happening in our universities out into the real world quicker. And that's kind of what I'm hoping we'll do with EDI. So I've done a few EDI training sessions where we've had people from academia and industry, and in general, this is a generalisation, but in general, academia is a bit further advanced, so it'd be really good to be able to share that knowledge. Okay, and then those are kind of sub-questions that I just want to pose. Anyone got any answers to these, that'd be great. But it's like, how do we know what is best practice? How won't we actually be able to evaluate something? How do we ensure that we do no harm, that we're minimising these unintended consequences that we can see? What statistics do I need to be able to go up to my pro-vice chancellor and say, let's do this will work really well? And how might we produce this kind of adaptable framework? And one of the things I want to do with this is not answer those questions on my own. So I want to set up kind of like a community of practice where we can get all of these people together and basically get all the fantastic ideas from lots of different people. Okay, so over to Katy.
Thank you. For my part of the project, we're really focusing on the barriers to people. And that's with the hope of providing information and evidence, really, to the people in our institutions that can help change that. So we're aiming to raise awareness of research. So where I am at the moment in Nottingham in engineering, research and teaching is quite separated. And so a lot of our undergraduates are not carrying on to do doctoral study. And so we're immediately losing quite a lot of students that way, and we don't really know what they're doing instead. And then the ones that we do have go on to doctoral study, we lose them, they don't carry on to do postdoc. And then there's uncertainty in that career pathway as well, and we're not getting them going through to academia. So I want to look at the pipeline. And so some of the questions I have, I think I really need to talk with Becky and align what's required. And the questionnaire you've already sent, but we hope to talk to our current researchers that we have working on energy. There's absolutely loads in my institution and in Lennie's as well, and just find out what attracted them to studying a PhD. We also hope to talk to some of our current undergraduates, of our postgraduate short students, about if there's any barriers that they perceive to doing doctoral study, and if there aren't, what are they doing instead? Why aren't they choosing to do it? And those that say yes, there are barriers, finding out what they are and whether they're intersectional as well, and the prevalence of certain barriers. And also trying to find out whether different demographics of people have different barriers. And we hope to do that again as well for postdocs. So with Lennie's connections with CDICE in September, we're hoping to do a workshop together with postdocs to try and ask some of these questions. And then hopefully we'll come and tell you about some of the results at a later date.
So one of the things I thought would be good to talk about is how do we actually balance this EDI fellowship role? Because as you said, that we get brought out one day a week. Now, any of us that work in academia understand that that doesn't always happen in the way that you would quite like it to. So the way that I balance it is actually I work from home on that day, because then I know that there's not going to be anyone looking on my office door. So that's just a practical thing I do. But the other things I do is I make sure that I get buy-in from key people. So my line manager, I spoke to before I even applied, they were really keen on it. The director of ERA was like, yeah, this sounds like a good thing. Oh, yeah, it's good, I can do this. I've got from the CDICE project, we're based in the agriculture building instead of the civil engineering school. So I went to see the dean and was like, hey, I want to do this. Is this okay? So even before I started, I was like telling them why this was a value, why I wanted to do it, and getting them on board. And then once you've got them on board, keep them updated and celebrate all of your wins. So we were talking about this yesterday, celebrate all the wins. But it's really important because we don't often celebrate wins, and that's a really good way of actually keeping the balance, because if you're telling people why it's important and how it's helping them, it's really good. So I'm always telling people what I do, how it's benefiting them, how it's kind of raising their research profile as well. So yeah, just celebrate all your little wins, and then find yourself a buddy. My best buddy. I always work better if I've got someone to bounce ideas off. So like find your tribe to work with, and then believe in yourself, because you know the amount of people that are like, oh, but I'm not the expert in EDI. It's like, they probably are. So I think that's everything.